Hi, I'm Ellie, and I'm here because Corbyn speaks for me.
Hi, I'm Gemma, and I'm here because I support a new kind of politics, and I want to see that happen with Jeremy Corbyn.
So what do you think of the number of people that are here so far then?
I feel like, considering it hasn't started, it's very impressive, and I feel like once he arrives, it'll just get more and more people will come and support him.
So why does Jeremy Corbyn do it for you then?
Throughout his life, he's shown integrity and principles in carrying out his politics, and I just think that we really need that today in our society.
And presumably you'd agree with that, yeah?
100%. I feel like out of every politician throughout my life, he's represented what I want the UK to stand for and the rest of the world.
But do you think he can really win?
I think that he can win as long as the rest of his party fully supports that this is what the Labour supporters want and stop infighting, because this is what we want, not what they want.
Yeah, you agree with that?
Definitely, yeah. I think if the media kind of can get behind him, if people can get behind him, we can definitely see a change.
So I appreciated this man's honest, straightforward thinking. I appreciated the feeling that I wasn't being lied to. I appreciated the fact that he had strong principles that he'd stuck with across decades.
Can I say something first? Thank you, every one of you, for being here today. There's something great about, in an age of digital media, in an age of social media, in an age of electronic communications, we fill a square, an open air square of an evening with people who want to discuss politics. And I thank all the others who've just spoken. And I realise this is a fashion contest. You've got two guys with beards, one with half a beard, one with a brown jacket, one with a blue jacket. And I'm very, very envious of Laura, because she's managed to get her poetry published. Sadly, no publisher is interested in my poetry. So you never know. We could do something one day. I want to say thanks for all of you for coming, and thanks for all you do in the Labour movement as a whole. I was here many times over the past few years for various events at the university, in the town and other places. I was particularly here during the floods over Christmas, those terrible floods that took place. And I was very proud of the work done by your MP, Rachel Maskell, in the work she did on the floods, the very genuine and very decent support she gave to people going through a very tough time. And we spent a long time talking to families who were trying to understand what had happened. And as I said to David Cameron a few days later, do you know what it's like when your flat is flooded? When you lose all your furniture, and you lose your family photos, you lose your record collection, you lose all of that, and you lose your children's toys, and you're left with a stench of sewage and foul water. Do you know what it's like? I'm still waiting for his answer. But Rachel was there, and she was doing a great job, which she continues to do as the MP for this city. And she sent me a text this evening to wish us well for this rally. She's away having a well-deserved break, and that's absolutely fine. And I want to say thank you to her for the work as an MP, but also for her work in our shadow cabinet. She didn't resign, she didn't walk away, she stayed on. And then you think about what she's stood up for in the National Health Service as a union organiser, and the way she stood up for proper spending on flood protection and flood defences in this city. I'll tell you what, when you cut public spending, it has a disproportionate effect. It has a very nice effect on the very wealthiest, who normally benefit from cuts in public spending by a cut in their level of taxation. But it has a very different effect at the other end of the scale, of those that are flooded out because the flood protection budget was cut. Those that were in a mental health hospital being supported, who suddenly find it's closed, they're out on the streets, and they are not being supported. It has an effect when adult social care is cut, because so much has been taken from local government budgets that those leaving hospital who desperately need care don't get it. And you could go on and on. And then when you have taxation laws that you should be carrying out, and then you cut the tax collecting staff who are meant to be chasing after the tax dodgers, the tax evaders and the tax havens, suddenly they're not chased after. The dodgers do get away with it. We all suffer as a result of that. And so we've got to change the culture on this. There used to be, and indeed there still is sometimes in some of our papers, the idea that somebody is so wealthy they can't afford to live in Britain. I'm very sorry for Philip Green during the problems he's going through at the present time, and I hope he gets through them, and I hope he pays up the money that's owed to everyone in BHS. But this idea that there's something good and clever about squirreling your money away, as the Panama Papers showed, I simply say to those people who are so rich, so wealthy, so mighty and so confident, we are all human beings. One day we all have problems. One day we all could suffer a heart attack. Our house could catch fire. We could be run over by a car. We could be attacked in the street. We could have a mental health breakdown. At that point, all of us are grateful for the emergency services and the social services that we fund. They should pay their share. And so the issue is a fundamental one about how we approach the economy. And this Labour leadership election is about a lot of that. I was very proud to contest the election a year ago. It's not about me, it's about us, all of us. And the fundamental message we were giving a year ago was that we lost the 2015 election, and I was devastated by that. We lost the 2010 election. I was devastated by that. You've got to analyse why we lost those elections. If the best we can do is offer austerity light as opposed to austerity heavy, it doesn't excite people. In fact, if you're offering up cuts in public services, it's not a very attractive thing to put forward when you're the party that represents the most deprived and the worst off within our society, as well as those that want to live in a coherent and cohesive society. So I tell you what, after the election last year, we've changed that. I want to thank John McDonnell for his work as the Shadow Chancellor, who set out a very clear agenda of opposition to austerity and instead a budget that is about sharing wealth, that is about redistribution, that is about funding public services. Firefighters being denied a pay rise for 7 years. Fire stations being cut when the floods are at their worst. Adult social care being cut when the crisis is getting worse. Homeless shelters being closed when there's more people sleeping on the streets. Food banks taking over because the DWP system is inadequate to meet the needs of the desperately poor and homeless in this country. None of that is necessary, none of that is right. That is why we've got to have a different way of doing things. And when people say, as some unkind people do, that the politics we, all of us in our thousands here tonight, represent is out of date, out of time and old-fashioned, I simply say this to them. It's a Labour opposition in the past 10 months that's gone from abstaining on a 12 billion cut in the welfare bill through the welfare reform bill of last year to opposition to it and defeating the government on its cuts in working tax credits. Defeating the government on the trade union bill in a number of aspects of it, but that's work in progress. Defeating them on their forced academisation of every school in the country. And by the way, shaming them into withdrawing their disgraceful proposal to take away personal independence payments for those with disabilities. And while we're talking of shame, we also shamed them into withdrawing from the idea that a British publicly run service would administer the prison system in Saudi Arabia. We were forced to withdraw from that because, from my mind, human rights are not national, they're universal, and we must stand up for them. And there's been an effect on this. This has had a big effect politically in this country. I ask those who detract from everything we're trying to do and everything we've achieved, why has Labour Party membership now soared to its highest level since the Second World War? Why are we now the biggest socialist party anywhere in Europe? Why in 2 days, just 2 days, did more people sign up as registered supporters of the Labour Party than the entire membership of the Conservative Party in the whole of the country? What we have become is a political party and a social movement that is challenging the narrative of society that somehow or other inequality is inevitable, poverty is inevitable, and if you want to get on in life, well, good luck to you. Make some money if you can, but don't worry about the rest. Sorry, we advance much better when we advance together, rather than we expect. And when I read some of the papers, I find that we're apparently monumentally unsuccessful. Well, we've gained all these members, we've won 4 parliamentary by-elections, 3 of them with a very substantial swing to Labour. We're winning council by-elections and council elections all over the place, and we won 4 mayoral contests, and the campaign run by the Conservative Party, particularly in London against Sadiq Khan, was the bottom of the barrel politics of the worst I've ever seen. We stand for something very, very different. I don't underestimate the task that's ahead of us, absolutely don't. But I just say this, it's not about individuals going off and doing great things. It's about what we do as a movement, as people are active in politics. We're all leaders in our own way, in the workplace, church, chapel, school, synagogue, mosque, gurdwara, life, street, whatever. We're all leaders. When a community comes together and finds a piece of disused land at the end of its road, complains about it, and turns it into a park where children can play and children can understand something about the natural world, you've achieved something together. You've also achieved something for all time for those children. Those that came together in the 19th century to stand against the indignities of the tenements and the slums of that time and the landlord system was what motivated the establishment of the Labour Party. Much of what Keir Hardie said was against the private rented sector and what it did. He wanted housing for all. Those communities that came together founded our party. That party, in turn, has changed the face of this country. We formed the National Health Service in 1948, a service free at the point of use as a human right. Now, everybody these days gives lip service to the NHS. I've even heard Tory politicians saying the NHS. I remember one, she said, the NHS is safe in our hands. I must say, it never felt like that as a union organiser within the National Health Service at that time. It did not feel like that at all. What they're doing is claiming to defend the NHS at the same time as destroying the NHS. Yes. Now, our NHS was founded by people with vision. That vision came from movements like this. Street meetings like this, who said, why do we have to pay for a doctor when we can't afford it? We don't get to go to a doctor. Our children die because we can't afford to get them treatment. The NHS health service free at the point of use as a human right. Very, very important. And what's this government doing? Requiring that 49% of all services are put out to the private sector, rationing medicines that are available, at the same time as encouraging a private medical system in this country. UKIP and others promote the privatisation and promote the destruction of our NHS. I say this, the absolute fundamental of what socialism looks like is when healthcare is a human right, free at the point of use, equally for all in our society. We are defending that. But it's also about how we are presented and how we get our message across. We're getting our message across on social media, we're getting our message across at public meetings like this, and this summer's leadership campaign is mainly open-air rallies like this all over the country, because I think that's a better way of doing things. And so tomorrow we're going to Hull, then we're going to Leeds, and on Monday we're going to Liverpool, and then we're going all over the country, doing these kind of rallies all over the country. And everywhere I get interviewed by people who travel from London, from the national media, and say, well, you haven't got any support here, it's clearly not going very well, and Labour is completely unelectable as a result of it. I then look at quite serious studies that have been done by a number of universities and a number of organisations into media coverage. One national newspaper has managed 80% of its reporting of the Labour Party since the leadership election last year as negative, and 20% as described as neutral. Not one article was supportive in any way. I'll leave you to guess which paper that was. There's a number of other papers we could draw your attention to. 83% of all media coverage has been basically hostile to the Labour Party since the leadership election last year. And the news media, the televised news media, is at a national level not a great deal better. Now, I find that objectionable, I don't like it, I don't think it's very fair, but I tell you this, we mobilise people by going past that, by mobilising people to understand the realities of their life and the way in which the political establishment has got to wake up to the realities of people's lives, the poverty, the homelessness, the inequality, the debt levels of students, and so many others. That is what they ought to be reporting. But it's also about how we do our politics. Now, I understand that some of the papers are sometimes quite critical of me and quite rude about me, I'm told. I don't buy them all, but I'm told. I tell you this, if you respond to abuse and rudeness in kind, you lose your audience. You might get a witty bit of repartee the first time, the second time you lose your audience, the third time they've completely gone, thank you, and they've completely gone. So I just say quite simply this, don't do abuse, don't do that kind of personal attack, don't do it online, don't do it on Twitter, don't do it anywhere else. Stick to the issues resolutely. And if anyone is behaving in an abusive way, simply tell them, don't do it. Don't do it, because the way forward is to bring people together, not drive them away. So, this election will be over on the 24th of September. From then on, maybe from now on, we've got to call out this government for what it's doing. Call out this government of the rich for the rich, for failing to deal with the injustices that exist in our society. The cuts that are taking place in local government, the cuts that are taking place all over, are not necessary. As John McDonnell has repeatedly said, austerity is a political choice, not an economic necessity. Young people burdened with increasing debt because of the rising student fees. Theresa May stood on the steps of Downing Street and said she was concerned about inequality. The following day, they introduced into Parliament yet another higher education bill that increases the fees yet again and confirms the removal of all grants, thus taking away the chance and the opportunity of university education for those who are unable to afford to borrow the money to get into debt for so many years that follow on. Other countries treat education as something of benefit to the individual and benefit to the whole community. Can't we stop treating education as a commodity and start treating it as a right? And the levels of homelessness in Britain, the rising tide of people sleeping on our streets, sofa surfing, sleeping in cars, trying to survive. Young people who can't possibly get a council place because there aren't enough of them, can't raise the deposit for the private rented sector, end up either staying with their parents as long as they can accommodate them if they can, or simply circling around with friends. So you see people in middle age and older in flat shares or sofa surfing because there is no opportunity for them. This is not the poorest country in the world. Instead of telling local authorities to sell their most valuable properties, instead of attacking the whole system of council housing, can't we instead invest in council housing with permanent tenancies to house those people in desperate need? Regulate the private rented sector and have a private market that is genuinely affordable. Look also at injustices. Women being hit with a higher pension age, greater and greater poverty in old age. It's simply not right or not necessary. The demonisation of people with disabilities through the scandal of the work capability assessment. The numbers that sadly felt they had no alternative but to take their own lives because of the way they were treated by a system based on indignity and cruelty. Can't we instead be a civilised society and give opportunities for everyone, including those with disabilities? And then you look at the rising tide of poor employment practices. I mentioned BHS, but I can't resist the temptation of mentioning Mike Ashley and Sport Direct. Yeah. That company operating on 0 hours contracts. They look behind me, yes. Pantomime season some way away, but they are behind me. That company operating on the site of Shirebrook Colliery, as Dennis Skinner pointed out, that place once employed people on reasonable wages with secure jobs. Now it's 0 hours contracts, paying on average much less than the minimum wage. The ambulance is called there frequently because of the conditions. Fire tenders called there frequently because of conditions. Look at the Select Committee report. If anything, that is a condemnation of modern employment practices in Britain, where the worker doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the profit at the top end of the scale. We can, we will, and we must turn that round. And then the gender pay gap, where women are paid less, 20% less than men on average across the whole country. That has to be addressed. Well done, Barbara Castle, for the 1970 Equal Pay Act. Well done, the women of Dagenham, for making sure that was brought about. But you've got to go further and have equal pay audits and real equality of opportunity and equal pay. And then look at Lloyds Bank. Are they in the square as well? No, they've gone. Their profits have gone up 101% in 1 year to £2.5 billion in profits. Now, most companies that make such stupendous profits of that say, well, actually, we do owe something to those that help us make those profits. And so Lloyds Bank have really responded in kind. They do owe something to them. They've given dismissal notices to 3,000 staff and closed 200 branches as a result. What is it about these companies that think they can get away with this kind of behaviour in modern Britain? It's a Tory government letting it happen. The rain may be falling on us soon, but it's going to pour on the Tories in time. We win victories in Parliament, not by the erudite nature necessarily of the speeches that are made in Parliament. We win those victories because of popular movements outside. We got a national insurance system, we got a National Health Service, we got Human Rights Act, we got Equalities Act, we got an end to the death penalty, we got an awful lot of other very advanced social legislation through Parliament because of popular movements outside. It's about how we do our politics and how we mobilise people. But it's also how we act within our society and our communities. After the Remain debate about the EU sadly went in the direction of Leave, there was an immediate upsurge in hate crime and racist violence across the whole country. In some parts of our country, I'm not blaming anybody in this hall, square place, obviously not. But what I'm simply saying is this: there is a danger that people decide the solution to their problems, the shortages of housing, the shortages of healthcare, shortages of school places, all those kind of issues are conveniently blamed on the nearest identifiable minority. I simply say this, two things. One, it's a Tory government that is cutting public services, underfunding public services, and putting an enormous strain on people. And secondly, prejudice, racist behaviour, hate crime will build not one house, one hospital, one school, train one nurse, or develop one public service. We as a community are much stronger when we do things together. We're proud of our strength and proud of our diversity. And so it's how we go about doing our politics. It's the politics of a society in which we believe everyone has rights to be included, that no one is left behind, that young people have that vision. They don't suffer the indignity of massive levels of debt, poor quality apprenticeship schemes. They don't suffer the inability to develop themselves and their careers. That we have a society that values culture, arts and music that goes with it, so that our children grow up with the chance of painting, drawing, writing poetry and performing music. So we develop that creative talent at the same time. It's the kind of society that we want to create. I want to say a huge thank you, not just to all of you that have come here tonight, but those that have made themselves committed to the campaign that we put forward a year ago. We've been campaigning on for the past 10 months. And now we're campaigning on again. What we're doing is asserting a traditional democratic pressure and democratic values of the kind of world we want to live in, where we have a foreign policy based on human rights and democracy, not things like the Iraq War and what went with that. And that's why our movement is very strong. That's why our party has become so much stronger. Of our vision, stood in squares like this without the benefit of a loudspeaker and convinced many people that the world could be run in a different way, and they achieved so much. We're being told that this is the era when the state must be rolled back, when public services must be rolled back, the only option available. Well, I tell you this, it's not. We in this country, people all over Europe, people all over the United States are looking at things differently. They're challenging the power of global corporations. They're challenging the power of trade agreements that impoverish people. And they're looking for a different way of doing things in a different world. This is the most exciting time in politics we've had as I can ever remember, because it brings together so many people in a decent, collaborative, supportive way, listening to each other. When we listen to each other, talk to each other, do things together, we are all very much aware of each other's problems, but we're also much stronger as a community. That is how political change comes about. That is why this campaign is so important. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for your support.